Hey everyone, I am Dylan, this is All You Can Board, and today I'm taking a look at Skytear Horde. Now you may have seen this game featured in a video previously where I talked about games I was excited about. This is a prototype copy that was sent to us by Skytear Games. I want to thank them for sending it, and I'm really excited that we got to take an early look at this game. Please keep in mind all these components are prototype, nothing here is finalized, the mat's not finalized. This is all just for me to take a look at and test, but it is designed by Giacomo Neri and Riccardo Neri. I probably mispronounced one of those names. I'm usually really bad with pronunciation. If you watch enough of our videos, you're probably aware of that. I don't have Carlo here to correct me on it, and it is from Skytear Games. So this is a solo and co-op game. It plays sort of like, it's a card battler that plays sort of like Hearthstone, and I made that comparison because the original Skytear was a MOBA-inspired tabletop game, sort of like League of Legends. This takes place in the Skytear universe, but it's not an expansion to the original. This is a standalone game with a completely different system, and that's as a card battler. So that one was sort of akin to League of Legends. This is sort of akin to Hearthstone, and I use that comparison mostly because of the lanes that are featured in the game and how the monsters fight each other, but it does play differently, and there's a lot of different systems here. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to dive in and give you a rules overview, sort of just a quick, not how to play, but just so you can understand what's all involved in how you're going to play this game, because that'll probably help you decide whether or not this is a game you want to back for yourself. So we'll do a quick overview, and then I'm going to go over some things that might be of interest to you if you want to back this, and some reasons you may not want to back this, depending on what you're interested in, where your interests lie. So I'll give you all the information you need to make your decision, so let's jump right in. So as I mentioned, this game does feature lanes. I think that's the first important thing to talk about. So when you play cards, your allies and towers and things like that, you're going to be playing them into your side of these 6 lanes. The Horde monsters are going to come out of the Horde deck, and they're going to go into their side of the lanes. And basically when we get to the fight phase, anytime that a monster and an ally are on opposite ends of the lane, they're going to fight each other. If a monster is completely uncontested, the lane is empty on the other side, they're going to attack your castle. If your castle's health is depleted, you lose the game. And if you are going to be able to make an attack with no monster on the other side of the lane, completely undefended, you're going to attack the gate. And to win the game, you need to get through all the gate cards until the boss comes out, which is called the outsider. And then if you beat the outsider, you win the game. So generally you want to be able to make attacks through the lanes to be able to win the game. Like, that's something you need to be doing, but there's reasons you might want to actually defeat monsters, which we'll get to in a little bit. So one thing to keep in mind is, just like other card battlers, all the monsters and the allies and the different creatures and things that you'll encounter in this game have health on them in the bottom right hand corner. When the health is depleted, they will die. Damage does carry over to the next round, so if I deal 3 damage this round to something that has 5 health, it will stay, the damage will stay on there until it's either healed off or that monster is defeated. They also have a power number in the bottom left. This is how much damage they will deal in fights. So one really important thing I want to talk about that I already kind of alluded to, that I think people should be aware of, is that you do not draw cards as normal like you would in a card battler. So often in these type of games, you just draw a card at the start of your turn, or you'll play a card that says draw 3 cards, things like that. Cards are hard to come by in Skytear Horde, so the way you draw cards is by defeating monsters. So yes, your goal is to basically make attacks in uncontested lanes to damage the gate, but in order to draw new cards to be able to play new things and have more options available to you, you do need to defeat monsters. Every monster you defeat draws you a card. If you're playing 2-player, only one of you will be able to draw cards, so you get to choose who draws that card for that monster being defeated, but it is something you have to keep in mind, and you are going to struggle at times to decide how you're going to get more cards into your hand, because they do not just automatically get drawn at the start of the turn. So in the first phase of the game, which is called the beginning phase, you're going to accumulate mana. So mana is given to you automatically, and the amount of mana you get is going to be equal to the number that you find in the bottom left-hand side of the current gate card. So for instance, this one that's out here right now says +4. You would gain 4 mana that you can then spend when it comes to the point of the game that you'll be able to play cards from your hand. You'll be able to use that 4 mana to pay for cards that are in your hand. There are sometimes going to be monsters out on the battlefield that will add extra mana to you. So basically these are extra powerful monsters, or for some reason or another, they are going to give you additional mana. So instead of just having 4, it might say that you get an additional 1 or you get an additional 2. After you calculate all of that, you will draw that amount of mana tokens, and this is how much mana you'll have to spend on cards when it comes to that point of the game. So the next phase of the game, which is the Horde phase, is when you're going to see actual cards come out of the Horde deck and populated into the lanes. If they are monster cards, they are going to stay in the lanes and actually be on the battlefield for you to deal with. If they're spell cards, they're going to resolve and go into the Horde discard pile. And if they're attachments, they'll attach themselves to monsters already on the battlefield to power them up. So those are the 3 types of cards you will encounter when these come out of the Horde deck. The amount of cards that come out of the Horde deck is going to be indicated with the current wave number on the gate card. So at the end of each turn, you're going to rotate the gate card so that a different wave number is shown upright. Whatever that wave number is how many cards are going to come out of the Horde deck during this Horde phase. So you sort of have to balance and be prepared for how many cards you have to deal with and know, is this going to be a really tough round where you have 3 or 4 cards coming out, or will this be a reprieve and you only have 1 or maybe 0 cards coming out? So the next phase of the game is the Alliance phase. This is when you get to pretty much carry out everything you want to do. So you can play cards from your hand for their mana cost. You can activate abilities that are listed as action abilities for cards that are already in play. You can move your allies and different cards around the battlefield to make sure that they're lined up with different monsters depending on what your strategy is. You can discard allies and cards that are from already in play if you want to say all the lanes are full and you want to play a new card. And then you can also engage minions. Now we haven't talked about minions yet, but minions are these cards up here, and they come in 4 colors: yellow, green, blue, and red. And this is a really important and unique part of Skytear Horde that I think is one of the most important things for you to understand, because if you ignore this, you're gonna lose in Skytear Horde. This is a really important component. I haven't seen anything quite like this in other card games I've played recently. So let's jump into minions now. So as I mentioned, minions come in 4 different colors, and they're going to have a certain number of tokens on them. This is how many of those minions are in play for that color. So for instance, if the yellow minions have no tokens on them, there are currently no yellow minions in play. However, if there are 4 tokens on the yellow minion card, that means there are currently 4 yellow minions in play. So why does this matter? Well, we're going to get to a phase of the game after the battling and stuff has happened that is called the Pillage Phase. In the Pillage Phase, you are going to have to pillage a certain number of cards off the top of your deck equal to how many total tokens are on the minion cards if the minion cards aren't actually in lanes themselves. If your deck runs out in Skytear Horde, you lose the game. I can't stress how important it is to manage this, because you can have a very successful game going on, but if you start pillaging all the cards from your deck, you're now incentivized essentially not to draw, because if you draw all the cards out of your deck, you lose, and they're gonna keep being pillaged off the top until you deal with the minions. So how do you deal with the minions? Well, in this Alliance phase that we're currently talking about, one of the actions you can do is to engage minions. What this means is you will take one of the colored minions and slide them down into one of the available empty lanes. Now you can actually engage these minion tokens that are on them. If you engage a minion color, every single damage you do to that minion is removing 1 token off the card. So you can essentially look at the amount of tokens that are on them as their health, and instead of removing health, you're removing minions. So this is something you want to do as often as possible. Managing and mitigating how many minions are out there is super crucial to winning in Skytear Horde, and there's lots of different monsters that are going to come out. They're going to add more minions into play. So this is something you're constantly managing to make sure you don't pillage too many cards off the top of your deck. So we talked about the Alliance phase. The next phase is kind of cool. It's called the Treachery Phase. So you can do all the plan you want, but there's still this one phase that can throw some wrenches into your plan. You're basically going to draw a single card off the top of the Horde deck, and a lot of these Horde cards have an additional effect besides what they're normally used for, which is called their Treachery effect. If they have this little star in the left-hand side of the card, there's going to be a Treachery effect that you have to read at the bottom. So whatever that is, you're going to have to carry out during the Treachery Phase. So the next phase is the Fight Phase. Now, before we get into the actual battling, you will carry out all the fight ability actions that are on cards for the Horde side and then for the player side. These can influence the battlefield in different ways or manipulate positioning. And after this has happened, all the battles are going to actually take place. You're going to start from left to right, and any monsters that are lined up in lanes against each other with allies are going to fight each other, deal power to the health, and we're going to see who dies, who stays alive, and carries on to the next round. If either one is uncontested in a lane, either your castle is going to get damaged or the gate's going to get damaged, and you're basically going to carry out every single lane in order until they've all been carried out. Next will be the Pillaging Phase that I already mentioned. In this phase, you will discard a certain number of cards off the top of your deck into a face-down pillage pile. This is separate from your discard pile, so you won't actually be able to see which cards you've lost from your deck. You will do this up to an amount equal to how many minion tokens are in play that are not in lanes. So if you've engaged a minion, even if you haven't defeated all the minion tokens that are on them, you will not have to pillage for them. So even just engaging with them and having, a chump blocker or something like that can mitigate how many cards you're pillaging off the top of your deck. After this, you're going to slide all the minions back up here to the top, and you'll have to engage them again next turn if you want to stop the pillaging from happening. And that's basically all there is to it. All we have after this is an upkeep phase. We're going to reset a couple things. Again, you don't draw cards, but you do have to discard down to 7 if you have more than 7, and you're just going to keep doing this until either your castle is destroyed, you run out of cards in your deck, or you destroy all the gates and the outsider, at which point you'll win. Okay, so we've gone over all the rules. Now let's talk about whether you should or shouldn't back this. And again, I can't answer this question for you. This is obviously unique to every person. I'm going to provide you with as much info as I can to help you make that decision. So you should back Skytear Horde if you're a fan of card battling games. And I say that obviously to not knowing how many card battling games you may have, or whether, you know, you just have too many and this isn't going to do enough different. But in my opinion, out of all the ones I've played, and like I said, I've played Marvel Champions, Keyforge, I've played Hearthstone, I've played Magic the Gathering, I've played Yu-Gi-Oh before, I've played all kinds of Radlands we just played. There's too many to name. I do think that this one does a lot of really unique stuff, and mostly because of the lane system. It's something I've only seen done in Hearthstone, are the ones that I've currently played. I know there's other ones out there that do it, and I'm trying to remember. I haven't played Summoner Wars, but I think that one might have something similar to a lane system. I can't remember for sure. Don't quote me on that. But I did really enjoy having a different way to do card battlers. So if you're someone who plays a lot of card battling games and you're wanting a new, unique take on it, a new way to experience them, this is going to satisfy all the things you love from card battlers, but it's going to give you it in a new framework that you can play solo or that you can play co-op. And again, there will be a PvP mode as well. So if you're a fan of card battlers, I think there's a lot here that you're probably going to enjoy to at least check out or at least play on some level. Another reason you should back this is if you're a fan already of Hearthstone or Keyforge or Marvel Champions or Magic the Gathering, and you are not wanting to get into a game that's a collectible card game. And the reason I say that is because collectible card games are a commitment. The reason I don't play Magic the Gathering anymore is that if I played Magic the Gathering and wanted to be into it, you know, as much as I was in the past, I wouldn't have time for other board games. I wouldn't have money for other board games because it's an ongoing commitment. Whereas games like Marvel Champions, like Keyforge, like Skytear Horde, you can basically get into and not feel like you have to go and buy a bunch of booster packs. You have to keep finding ways to supplement what you're doing to stick with the competition, whatever the case may be. Because this isn't a competitive, you know, one-on-one battling game, you don't have to feel like you're behind by not buying certain cards. All you're limited by is your enjoyment. If there end up being new packs released or new monsters released, you only have to buy them if you find that you're bored with the current content or you've outplayed the current content. But everything you need otherwise is in the box. So I think that if you're someone who enjoys card battlers and those games I specifically mentioned, but you're looking for something that isn't going to be a huge money commitment, a huge time commitment, this is the type of game you want to look into. Just like games I've talked about before, like Keyforge and like Marvel Champions. Another reason you should back Skytear Horde is if you like solo experiences. Now, this does have a 2-player mode, but I played the 2-player mode and I played the solo experience. I feel like it functions better as a solo game, and the reason I say that is because when you play 2 players, the difficulty is adjusted, but you both have your own deck and you're still using only the single lane. It's not as though you each get your own lane. You're both playing cards to a shared lane. So the goal is the exact same as when you play solo. The puzzle you're trying to figure out is the same. You're just doing it with another person. Believe me, that's still fun to be able to have someone else to make those decisions, help with strategy, and also just the fact that you can experience the game that way. But I found that I was able to feel more relaxed and enjoy it a little bit more when I was able to just sit down at the table, play this solo, and take as much time as I wanted without having to, you know, feel pressured or just say, hey, I don't know if this lane's going to get clogged up because my ally is going to, or my other player I'm playing with is going to want to play certain cards here, but there's cards I want to play in that lane as well. So in my personal opinion, I think it functions better first as a solo game, but the co-op experience is still great. So I would say that if you are looking for a solo experience, this has extra points right away as something you might want to back, especially if you like card battlers. Like Marvel Champions, having a solo card battling experience is just a great thing, in my opinion, to have in the collection. Having one that also accommodates a second player so that if someone else comes over, you can still play it, also great. I should also mention that there is going to be a potential to play with 3 players where you can do 2 players against the Horde, but 1 player is actually controlling the Horde minions. So that'll be another option you can do if you wanted to play with 3 players as well. Okay, so let's get into some of the reasons you might not want to back Skytear Horde. It might not be for you. The first thing I'm going to talk about is if your number 1 priority on Card Battler is PvP. This is not a PvP first game. This is a co-op game first and foremost, or a solo game. The PvP mode is going to be sort of an additional way to play this game. So you will still be able to get PvP excitement out of this game, but if that's your first and foremost priority when you're going into a card battler, I would say that there are other options you might want to explore. I wouldn't even recommend, obviously then I wouldn't even recommend Marvel Champions and things like that. At that point, I'd be recommending Radlands or Keyforge or, you know, Magic the Gathering, things like that, because that's a pure, true PvP experience. This is something that is a solo and co-op game that is also going to have a PvP mode. So don't come into this thinking this is a PvP game that I'm going to focus on that. You may be able to get enjoyment out of it that way, but I wouldn't say that that's where sort of the priority in the design and everything lies. And the other reason, which might seem obvious, but I'm going to say it anyways, is that if you don't like card battling games, you probably aren't going to want to back this. And the reason I'm still mentioning this, even though it seems obvious, is that sometimes a game comes along that can change your mind on card battlers or change your mind on a genre. You know, it's the game that I normally don't like this, but this is the exception. I wouldn't say this is the exception to card battlers. If you don't like card battling games already, I don't think this is going to be the one that changes your mind. But that being said, look at the rules, you know, look it over. It is possible that you have only experienced card battling games through games like Magic the Gathering, for instance, and you didn't enjoy the PvP one-on-one environment with having to collect all these cards. And maybe the solo co-op experience, more relaxed, where you get everything you need in the box, is something you're looking for. I don't personally think it's going to change your mind on card battlers, but I'm sure for someone out there it might. But just one thing to keep in mind is that if you don't like card battlers, this might not be the game for you. And the last thing I want to mention is just the future possibilities of this game. So with any game like a card battle like this, something I always think of, and maybe this is just me, is, you know, what is the future? What does the future hold in terms of expandability and other possibilities? If I really get into this game, if I back it, if I buy it, and I am enthralled with it, is it going to feel like there is just, after I've played everything that there is in the box, that I'm done, or is there a potential and possibility to have this expanded and added to? I can't speak to whether or not something is or is not going to get added to the game. I have no idea, but I will say that the potential is definitely there. So if this is a game that excites you, if this is a game you play and are really, really into, it's not as though you've seen everything that there possibly is. It would be very easy for them to add new outsiders into the game, new monsters, new allies. I would love to see them add new colored player decks as well. I think there's tons of possibilities to keep adding new decks and new types of play styles into the game. There's a ton of different ways. You can add new castles, you can add new gate cards and things like that, new campaigns. So there's a ton of expandability here if that happens. I can't, again, guarantee it's going to, but the fact is, if you're wondering whether it's possible, it is more than possible. I'm sure we'll see some unveiled during the campaign, and if this game is successful, I'm sure you're going to see expansions and different things added on to it. So lots to be excited about if you're someone that is just, you know, all in on this and you love the idea and you want to have as much as you can. I think the future is really bright there. And that's pretty much all I've got to tell you about Skytear Horde. So if you have any other questions about the games, things you're, you know, considering before you back it, drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer every one of them, or if I don't know the answer, direct you to someone who can maybe answer them for you. Like I said, this is a really cool card battling game. I am a huge fan of card battlers, and I love when they do something different. The lane system is something that I haven't seen as much in a physical card battler, so it's really cool to get something like that we can play at the table, and there is a lot of possibilities for the future. So again, thanks so much for watching. I hope this video helped you make your decision on whether you're gonna back this for yourself. Again, drop me a comment if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.